As some of you may recall, I reviewed The Cross and the Switchblade by my boy, Mr. L. Hartley. Of course, it's an adaptation of David Wilkerson's book. But you remember how much I liked that, and I liked looking at his art. So if you're not familiar with L. Hartley or the other video, L. Hartley was a cartoonist. He worked at Marvel for a long time. He drew an issue of Thor, mostly romance stuff at Marvel, before the comic industry decided to kill itself by only making superhero comics. But you can see, especially in this panel, where Mr. Hartley was at his best. Just really fun looking figures here. Be interesting to get some of his Marvel books and compare them from that era when he was doing that to this. A lot of depth here, and you can tell that he was having a lot of fun when he was doing this stuff, even though the subject matter is quite serious, this one being about Corrie Ten Boom, hiding place. And of course, it is about World War II and the Ten Boom family, who decided that they were not going to stand idly by and let them National Socialists just willy-nilly kill the Jewish people. And so they built a room in their house to hide them. And then eventually they were found out. Corrie and her sister were put into prison. Her dad died soon after that. And then eventually they get put in concentration camps, and they're shuffled around until they go to Ravensbrück. And then a lot of stuff happens. This is historical. I mean, if you're, want to know what happens, her sister dies. There's not really spoilers on history, is there? Yeah, it's definitely interesting how Mr. Al Hartley, was able to take The Hiding Place, this book written by Corrie Ten Boom, the story of her life during World War II and afterwards, and condense it into the size of, fairly normal, standard-sized comic book. So page 26, 27, how many pages total? Like 30 or so pages. Not very long, for sure. But he does a good job, and it kind of makes me long for those days when there was an economy of storytelling. Obviously, page count now is somewhere around here. But that's still a substantial amount of comic book space, and these guys were able to tell a story in that time, one that was satisfactory, one that has emotional depth like this. Obviously, the source material helps with that, but one of the things I noticed is the characters start out really looking youthful and beautiful. Get back to the early pages here. You see, just really youthful and beautiful, and then over the course of the book, he obviously changes them so that they're looking more haggard and more tired, until we get to the end, obviously, where she ends up getting released, apparently due to a clerical error. That's crazy. Everyone else was killed. Pretty crazy. But you can see the art's really good. I'm not totally sold on this style of art and the content, but like this panel really works really well. That's a really good panel. I like the use of color here. Shot with this guy in the foreground and with him walking in here into this really terrible reality of death being conveyed here, and it's very different from the rest of the pages. Even the death of her sister, which is tragic in its own right and conveyed really well. But then you get here, and this panel is different from anything else you've seen. The angle it's at, cramped nature of it, and it's really, really well done. One thing I don't like about these Spire comics is they don't really tell you what Hartley did or didn't do. Obviously, I think he penciled these and he inked these, but I don't, did he color it? He probably had a hand in at least deciding what colors were going where, I would imagine, but it doesn't really say. But there's some, they're pretty standard in terms of color, but there's some really good ones, like, you can look at this panel here, and you can see some sort of different choices being made. Overall, really a decent comic. And it shows that not all comic books have to be something about, something fictional. In this case, we're doing a non-fiction adaption, and it works. Again, his art might be a little too cartoony for the subject matter, but I still think it's okay. I think it works. It's not too far off. And if you ever see these in a 25-cent bin or something, these Spire comics, check them out. Give them a read and see what you think. I know I have a lot to learn just from this cartooning style and his ink work and everything, and I'm going to go back through these and really study them. So I have interest in doing sort of nonfiction stuff or doing something different, maybe historical fiction. We'll see. Yep, Hiding Place, Corrie Ten Boom.